Switch so Paul Bedford will follow Michael. That's okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll let you have a minute to set up there, or a few seconds.
There's been passed out a written version of what I'm going to say.
Okay, has everybody got that? Has that been circulated? He just indicated there's a submission, he's submitted some? He's submitted two. Both have been circulated, so you can feel confident about that.
Thank you.
Number 8 and 45 to the committee, that's the numbers of the documents that have been issued to you.
Is my microphone working?
He's going to help you with that. All right.
All right, thank you very much. I want to set the clock. An urban design classmate and I found ourselves early in our careers responsible for elevated expressway removal projects in San Francisco and New York. My work in New York concerned the elevated West Side Highway, and his addressed the Embarcadero Expressway in San Francisco. We both provided detailed and, we thought, convincing ideas for the removal of the elevated structures in the respective cities. Our work had little effect on the highway debate because of a gaggle of engineers and automobile lobbyists providing contrary views to those offered by our team. The waters were muddied and the public was scared. The removed projects lingered. In 1973, a cement truck driver named Guido knocked down the West Side Highway in New York, and in 1989, an earthquake knocked down the Embarcadero. A most surprising thing happened after each structure fell down. Nothing. Commuter traffic reorganized itself, and each city went on only better. Traffic congestion did not increase or decrease. Commuter times remained more or less constant, but the environments in the expressway corridors along waterfronts were radically improved. To Toronto's credit, we removed the beach leg of the Gardiner as an act of commission. By consensus, none of the predicted disasters occurred. On the contrary, things improved. The resultant boulevard became part of the normal city, a landscaped street. Congestion associated with ramps disappeared, and commuter travel times remained constant. Now we have the best kind of evidence in the cases of expert disputes, which is what we have here, which is empirical evidence. The results are surprisingly similar in a number of seemingly different situations. Negative impacts are minimal. Commuter traffic rearranges itself so that congestion and travel times remain more or less constant. In each case, cities are enhanced qualitatively. The following slides indicate the before and after situations in a variety of cities, including New York, San Francisco, Seoul, and Madrid. This is the West Side Highway in New York in the before Guido. This is the after. This is the Embarcadero in San Francisco in the before. This is the after. This is the expressway in Seoul, Korea, the before, the after. And in Rio, Madrid, before and after. A number of cities have chosen to remove their curious elevated artifacts. Others did not and continue to dither. Examples of removal include Boston, New York, San Francisco, Seoul, Portland, Seattle, Madrid. This is the group Toronto wants to belong to. Those dithering and retaining their expressways include Rochester, Dallas, St. Louis, New Orleans, Detroit, Buffalo, and Syracuse, a place you don't want to be. Berlin, the inventor of the Autobahn, Paris, London, Rome, Milano, Stockholm, etc., of course, never built such structures. They were no more inclined to do so than they would put jungle gyms in their living rooms. All of the work of Toronto's task force suggests that transit is the only remedy to congestion. In the last 20 years, Beijing has built 7 ring roads, each fully congested on opening. Shanghai has built 14 subways, while we discuss the Eglinton line. Elevated highways, we all agree, are dreadful for both the scenic and ecological environment. Fundamentally, the Gardiner and the DBP are two 400 highways that terminate at the waterfront. 80% of rush hour traffic terminates at the waterfront. The waterfront in Toronto is rightly emerging as Toronto's singularly most important public place. It is increasingly Canada's facade into the world and the center of international tourism. How did we get to this position? It's hard to believe, but urban elevated highways are post-World War II invention, a product of Victoria's West can-do spirit. They are a Jetson project. Trouble with the congestion, we'll just fly over it. They are now, we should admit, a mistake we don't have to live with. Would we build one now? Certainly not. I have 5 fundamental points I'd like to suggest in summary. One is that this is not a transportation issue. If we accept the conservative assumption of a 3-minute additional commuting time, 3 minutes of a 1-hour commute is a 5% increase. 3% of the commuting public uses the section of the Gardiner in question, so that's 3% of 5%, which is 0.15% of 1%, affecting the commute system of Toronto. That's even if we accept that unlike other cities, elevated expressway and LOA expressway takedowns, Torontonians, like lemmings, would not adjust their behavior.
Could you wrap up, please?
Yes. Secondly, I'll be very quick. The hybrid is not a hybrid. The hybrid is actually a kind of retain and drag proposal. Thirdly, is this a financial question? It's a very large financial question. It's a billion-dollar question, which is going to keep visiting us as long as the elevated structure exists. Fundamentally, this is, fourth, a quality of life issue. It has to do with what regard do we hold ourselves and our descendants in. And finally, it's an integrity of public discourse question in the dark recent chapter of Toronto's politics, where everything that cost an additional dollar wasn't worth doing, has served us poorly. I urge adoption of the Boulevard option as a generational contribution to the life in Toronto.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Cressy.
Thank you for the presentation. Just 2 questions. The first, you listed a series of cities that made the decision to tear down their elevated expressways. Could you go over that list again? So just let me see if I have it rather than drag it out. San Francisco, New York, Seoul, Madrid, Boston, Seattle. Did I miss any?
Seoul, Madrid, Boston, Portland.
Portland, thank you. Are you aware of any major cities anywhere that are building elevated expressways?
No.
Anywhere?
Well, I'm sure there are some. China builds elevated expressways occasionally, as I mentioned in the case of Beijing.
Are you aware of any cities in the Western industrialized world building major elevated expressways?
I'm not aware of urban elevated expressways. Some places and bridges at the perimeter of suburbs are being done.
Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Sir, a question that I've been struggling with, and I wonder what your view is. I hear a lot of debate about sort of the merit of having raised expressways or having at-grade transportation, but are all expressways inherently equal? Meaning that when we discuss an expressway, I know in yesteryear we would have debates, they would have debates over destroying let's say a low-income neighborhood and putting an expressway right through it, and there'd be justifiable uproar over that. In this case, we're debating a specific location, not the entirety of the expressway, but a specific location where there's a contiguous connection between the DVP and the Gardiner. So when we debate expressways, is it just that expressways all the time, anywhere, no matter where it is, no matter what it is a bad idea? Or are there, in your view, some exceptions for where it might be reasonable to have one?
No, I think that expressways are not equal in terms of their virtue and meaning. Certainly, the Don Valley, which is fundamentally running through a ravine and has bridges over it, is an obstructive structure and doesn't affect the quality of the center city. The Gardiner, which is quite short once you clear York Street West, is something which is a part of the 400 system, and certainly its connection to the 427 is crucial. What What problem we have in Toronto is we have the Gardiner Expressway running as an elevated structure exactly across the face of the city, which is both a matter of 600 feet of unpleasant passage, noise, pollution, and gasoline residue, exactly at the point which is communicating between what is the established center of the city and waterfront, which is its principal civic asset. So in that case, as in the cases that I showed, cities resolved that that's an intolerable place to have an expressway, which is an industrial apparatus, and they do away with them. Civilized cities do. Ones with any wherewithal do.
In Manhattan, they retained the West Side Highway going up from Hell's Kitchen up along the Hudson.
Yes.
And I think they tore down what south of.
What happened is it got knocked down by Guido.
Okay.
And the northern section is down from a berm. So if you're walking along Riverside Drive, you overlook the expressway to the west and have clear views of the river, et cetera. And Linear Park is the riverfront.
That's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Moser.
Thank you. In these different situations, how proactive was the wherever they tore these down? How active was the community in finding resolutions for alternates, or was it the adjustment came automatically? In other words, was the city proactive in helping the process, doing one-way streets, taking the loading, looking at streets, parking, all those issues which help the situation?
Well, in every case, of course, the cities do what they can. I think that it's fair to say the places that have taken them down have done it because it's such a kind of civic and economic imperative not to have the expressway on that point. They take them down, and then they do various adjustments over time. But as you've heard other times, miraculously, a lot of the congestion and the traffic disappears. It reassigns itself. People travel in other modes and means. And so cities go on making adjustments over time.
So the burdens on and I don't know the details because it looks very nice on what I'm seeing here. The impacts and how they were measured at that particular time, and does anybody document how proactive these different situations were and how they were helped?
There's some very good things you can see on the internet about 6 cities that have removed elevated expressways, but there's a whole lot, there's a ton of material on the subject now because it's counterintuitive. If you say you have an elevated expressway and you take it away, surely it will adversely affect the transportation system. Unfortunately, it isn't true. It's a non-intuitive thing. And so, as I say, the traffic gets reassigned, modal split changes, the transit enhancements occur, which in every scenario we have to have transit enhancements. There's no other remedy for congestion than transit. And as a matter of fact, congestion is probably going to stay like it is now. It'll have to be managed. And it's a kind of internal resistance machine. People will come as long as they can do it. As long as there's a place to park and they can actually drive, they'll come. But it will limit itself, just as the Gardiner since 1975 has limited itself, right? No, more people don't try to drive at rush hour in the Gardiner anymore, even though the number of commuters has tripled in that period.
So as you're saying, as part of the solution, people maybe not travel as often, be selective as to
other modes
when they go to different destinations.
Exactly.
Based on what they're.
In every case that's been documented.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMahon, and then Councillor Holliday.
Thank you very much. Very nice to meet you, Michael. Thank you for that scenic slideshow. First of all, what are the chances, do you think, of Toronto having a San Francisco-style earthquake?
Well, you may be surprised to know.
Would end the debate.
I don't want anyone to flee the room, but we're actually not in the earthquake-free territory. However,